Hello, it's David with the Ag Forecast Network question of the week, where I share my thinking, my thoughts, and I highlight what the consensus is telling us about a key question that I'm watching. This week's question on the surface looks pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry, but we're going to talk about the history of the question, so stick with me. The question is, what's the probability of the November 2020 soybean futures price exceeding $10.50 a bushel before August 1st? Of course, if you're following along, this is the middle of July, a few weeks left. That futures contract's trading about $8.80 a bushel. So there is an almost 0% chance of us getting a huge rally to move us to get this question resolved. There isn't a lot of uncertainty with respect to the last few weeks of this question. I broke my own rule. I just uploaded a forecast of a 0% chance of happening. My forecast is in green. The consensus there is the dashed gray line. But I want to talk about the importance of the Ag Forecast Network tool in shaping or reflecting on and shaping our thinking and how things have played out over multiple months. So let's go look at the soybean futures contract price. This is the bar chart .com price chart of this contract. As you can see, we're about 880 right now. And this question was initially asked back in October, where we spent a lot of time right around that 975 mark. And so we asked the question, what's the probability of us having about a 75 cent rally to get to that 1050 mark? And as you can see, it was varying degrees of possibility, but we spent a lot of time talking with producers during our Outlook meetings last winter about this very question. And it wasn't out of the realm of possibilities, especially when you consider we were thinking about getting that big trade deal, that phase one trade deal, any minute with China. So there's a lot of optimism, or a lot of possible optimism surrounding this question. So if you go back and look at where my thinking was back in October, my first forecast was about a 40%. And the consensus wasn't nearly as optimistic as I was in the first few months, but it was still up there, 30% chance. And over time, it started to fade. Similarly, the futures prices fade. It fell to the 925 there in early January, early February. Then we had another step lower here in March after the COVID situation. But stepping back, this question had a lot of uncertainty about it when we initially launched this question. Now, I'll show you the parallel question, the question that we asked in tangent with that. This question got resolved. It was the same contract. What's the probability of the November 20 soybean futures price falling below $9 per bushel before August 1st? And on March the 9th, as the economic slowdown was coming into focus and all the markets stepped back and contracted, we saw this contract fall below $9 per bushel. It resolved the question. We got this scored. I scored pretty well on this question, but as you can see, back in October, we said, what's the probability of getting that 1050 or about 75 cents above where we were trading? And what's the probability of us getting 75% below where we were trading? My first forecast on this was about 65%. The consensus, when people got in and started forecasting, dropped about a 50-50 shot of this happening. And then, of course, as the things really started to fall apart in February and early March, and this probability really jumped higher. So what's the point here? Thinking about the futures market today, it's pretty clear we're not going to get to 1050. However, 7 or 8 months ago, when we were starting to think about those first budgets, when we were thinking about where could things go in light of this promised trade deal, this phase one trade deal, what came about to be the phase one trade deal, what is possible? And at least in my thinking, as I reflect on this, I was a little more concerned about the downside here than the upside. My forecast reflected that. And over time, my expectations shifted a lot. And that's what's really important about a tool like the Ag Forecast Network, is it allows us to look back and reflect. I probably was a little slow to pull my forecast here lower. I'm not surprised. I know my biases a little bit enough to know that that's what I'll do, but it's helpful to see this, and maybe down the road I'll start to change that behavior, that built-in bias that I have. So again, to recap, this question is going to finish up here in August. It's going to get a resolution of no, we did not get above 1050, and that's um, that's okay. But what we really need to do is we need to step back and say, what were we thinking 8 or 9 months ago? This is why this tool is really powerful and really important. I wasn't as optimistic about a rally back in October 2019 as I was things contracting, and that's what we've seen here, and that's what we've seen over the last few months. Things have changed a lot. Similar situation for corn. We have a probability of corn getting over 425. I'll talk about that question here in a future video, so follow us along. Don't forget to update your forecast. If you're not part of the forecast network right now, be sure to take advantage of our free trial to get started right away. Again, David with the Ag Forecast Network. Thanks a lot.